Hi guys, welcome to Piece of Code and welcome to this video. In this video, we are going to see one of the most important services of AWS and one of the core services of AWS, which is Amazon S3, and it stands for Simple Storage Service, right? And a lot of questions in the exam comes from this topic, and it's also one of the favorite topics for interview questions also, right? Now let us dig deep into this particular topic. So, introduction. What is Amazon S3? Amazon S3 is one of the main building blocks of AWS. It is advertised as infinitely scaling storage. So it's a storage service, right? Many websites use Amazon S3 as a backbone for the storage purposes, right? For storing a lot of files, videos, images, whatever you want, right? Many AWS services use Amazon S3 as integration as well, because you can integrate Amazon S3 with almost all of the services with AWS, and we're going to see how you can do that in our next slides. We'll have a step-by-step approach to S3, so don't worry about it. We're going to master S3 from 0 to 100. Now, S3 use cases. So these are all the use cases of S3. As S3 is an object storage, so basically you can store anything on S3, right? So it is used for backup and storage, disaster recovery, archiving of data, like for long storage of data, hybrid cloud storage, like on-premises plus cloud storage, right? You can store some data on premises and you can store some archived data on the cloud. Then application hosting, like static web hosting, like static websites, you can also host that. Then media hosting, like images and media files. Data lakes and big data analytics, like you can store whatever you want to process in S3 and then later you can import that data into any other service, right? You can also do that. Software delivery, like distribution of patches, right? Software patches or new release of softwares, you can just upload it into S3 and you can distribute that with anyone you like. Then static websites, right? These are all the use cases, and it's very important to understand each of these use cases, and you will understand how actually S3 manages to do all these things, right? All right, let's move forward. So this is a very important thing. You need to understand how S3 operates. So one of the important things about this is buckets, right? So Amazon S3 allows people to store objects, and it is files, right? We just refer files as objects on S3, and we store those objects or files in buckets, and you can just compare it with directories. So you store files in folders, which is known as buckets, right? And the files is known as objects, right? Just you can, if you have some issues for buckets and objects, just compare it with folder and files. So buckets have a globally unique name. It means that whatever bucket you are going to create, the folder you are going to create, it must be having a unique name, right? Buckets are defined at the regional level. So for each region you will be having one bucket, right? You cannot create a global bucket, like which will be serving for all the regions of AWS. You can create, for example, for a region US East 1A, right? You can create, right? So US East 1 region A is the availability zone. S3 looks like a global service, but buckets are created in the region. Even though you should having a globally unique name, but still S3 is a regional service. So whatever bucket you are going to create, it is going to be created for a particular region. Later on we are going to discuss how you can kind of make your buckets global by using replication and all that, but for now just understand that buckets are regional. Naming convention, let us understand this. No uppercase, everything will be lowercase, and you cannot use any underscore. Bucket name should be 3 to 63 characters long. It cannot be an IP address, must start with lowercase letter or a number, and must not start with prefix, right? This kind of prefix must not end with prefix, suffix, hyphen S3 alias, right? You can do like this, right? So you cannot start with this thing or you cannot end with this thing, right? So it must be like that. So you can create S3 bucket like Akash 1 1 2 3 5 6 7 8 9. So whatever bucket name you are giving, it should be unique, and it should be a collection of characters and numbers, and everything should be smaller case. Just remember that much should be fine. Okay, now moving on to S3 objects, right? Now we talked about buckets. So buckets are folders or directories, and objects are just files. But it will be better if you just acquaint yourself by talking about buckets and objects like this. So objects have a key, What is the key? The key is actually the full path of the object. So where the object is actually stored is actually the key of the object, right? For example, you are storing it in s3:// as it starts, it's stored in s3, so we start with s3:// then your bucket name and then your object name. So this entire thing is the key of the particular object. So you can compare it with the location of the file in your folder, right? The entire absolute path of your file, that's what you can compare it to. Here if you have folders within buckets, then another folder and then the file, so it entirety will be considered for the key of this particular object, right? The key is composed of prefix plus object name. So just this is the object name, right? Whatever you have previous of the particular object name is just the prefix. So this is the prefix of the particular object and this is the actual object name. There is no concept of directories within buckets. So remember that in the UI, when you are creating buckets and under buckets you create folders and everything, there is nothing known as a folder or something like that. It's just that you are creating another subtree under your key. For example, you have a bucket 1 and you created a folder 1, and inside it you created an image or you uploaded an image. So don't think that this is the actual folder that is being created, right? But the thing is, it is in the UI you will see it in a way that you will think that it is a folder, but actually this is the key, right? The key of the object. So three things you need to be familiar with while dealing with S3. One is buckets, another one is objects, and then we have keys. So basically these three things are what you are going to work with S3. But as the UI, in the UI you can just compare it with folders and stuff, but in your mind don't think that they are actually folders or directories. So just keys with very long names that contain slashes, right? So basically means that if you have one folder under another folder, like in this structure, they are just keys within another key. Like for example, folder within another folder, so they are being separated by slashes. That's all. Before going into security and bucket policies, right, let us see a demo on S3, how you can create a bucket and how you can store objects, right? Let us see a quick demo on S3. Okay guys, let us see an example about S3 and how you can create a bucket in S3, and let us see a lot of things about S3, right? So let us just search for S3 over here in the services section. Okay, so I am in my S3 management console, right? Here you can click on create bucket. Okay, so you are in this console, right? So let us see some things about this console. So first thing is the bucket name, and I've already told you that the bucket name should be a unique name. So you can give anything as a unique name, for example Akash bucket, some random numbers, right? So, and you can choose the region, because as I've told you, right, the bucket will be regional, right? So one bucket will be associated with a particular region. So it is not a global service, right? Even though the name will be global, but still your bucket will be a regional bucket. Okay, so let us keep it US East 1A, and let us for now just ignore all these options. We are going to look into it in detail later on. Then let us go to bucket versioning is disabled. We will see all of these things later on, and encryption also we are going to see later on. So let us just click on create bucket. Okay, so this bucket has been created, and access, you can see buckets and object are not public, right? Obviously, because we by default the buckets are private, which is basically private to the user who has created the bucket, right? Now here I can upload something into my bucket by clicking on the button, right? And let us upload something now. So let us click on this add files button, and let us search for where was it? Let us go. Okay, should be inside this S3. Okay, so let us upload this beach and coffee image, both of them, into my bucket. So all these .jpg files I have uploaded, and then you can just click on upload here, right? Don't worry about any permissions and stuff. We are going to dig deeper into it later on, so don't worry about it right now. Okay, so it is kind of uploading right now. So the upload status is succeeded. Let us close. Let us see some stuff about it. Let us click on this beach.jpg right now, and there are some stuff about it. So it has a S3 URI. So using this S3 URI, you can actually fetch this object from any other service, right? Any other AWS service. You can this kind of a location of this particular object in S3, right? And as you can see, it consists of the key here and with the object name, and it also has a ARN, because each thing whatever you have in Amazon, in AWS, is actually associated with a Amazon resource name, which is a ARN. And there is an entity tag, and then there is this object URL. So this is the public URL using which you will be able to access the object, right? And there are some bucket properties. It says that bucket is not public and it is disabled. So storage class, it says it is standard storage class, which is the default storage class. We're going to learn about storage classes later on, so don't worry about it. By default, it's a standard storage class. Encryption is default encryption, SSCS3, and yeah. So as I've told you, right, this is the object URL, and using this object URL, you will be able to access the object. Let us see if we are able to access the object. Let me open a new tab and just paste this thing and click enter, right? So it says access denied. If you are able to see the screen over here, it says access denied, because the reason is that, as I've told you, right, the bucket is by default private, right? So it is only accessible by the user which has created it. We haven't specified any specific permissions to who or whom will be able to access our objects in our bucket, right? So if anyone else other than a person outside the user tries to access the particular object, then that person is not able to access, and this is the public URL, so obviously it is not accessible. But if I click on open button over here, and it will open up a new tab, and just let it load for a bit. So you can see, if I click on this open button, I'm able to access the object. Why is that? So if you see the URL portion over here, right, here it has certain more details other than the public URL. A lot of it kind of is a hash or a key, you can see, is associated with it, or a token, some kind of token associated with this URL, right? So this is actually you can say signed URL. So this is known as a signed URL. We are going to learn about signed URL in detail later on, but for now just understand that this URL is designed for the particular user to access the object. That is why I am able to access this object. So this URL has been signed by me. It means that the signature belongs to me, which is me, the user. That's why I am able to access the particular object. So if I give this URL to anyone else who doesn't have access, right, then he will not be able to access, right? This particular signature is kind of given to me, so I am able to access this object. So that's why it is possible, but using the public URL, I am not able to access the object because it's not possible. Okay, let us see how I can delete objects. It's very easy. If I just go to my coffee.jpg and you can go to object actions, and you can, let's go back to my bucket. Just select this coffee.jpg and let us go to delete over here, and just click or copy permanently delete from there to here, and just click on delete objects. So that object will get deleted, right? So yeah, if I go to metrics, so it says some bucket metrics, total number of objects. So it will get updated later on, total bucket size, storage class analysis. So you can just kind of analyze what happens in your bucket using the metrics. If I go to managements, there are lifecycle rules. We are going to understand about lifecycle rules later on. There is some replication rules which is related to cross region replication or same region replication. We're going to see about that, and then there are some inventory configurations. Then there are access points. So access points are just kind of a URL, you can just say. It is kind of a access point, like from where other services will be able to access your S3 bucket object, right? It's kind of a shared access, you can just say, but it is kind of different. I'm not able to explain right now. We're going to see this later on. Okay, so don't worry about it. When we go to permissions, there is some bucket policies over here. So the bucket policies govern who are able to access your bucket and your objects, right? So then there is the course configuration. Basically, if there is some kind of other resource in another domain which wants to access your objects, then you have to configure that domain over here, so that external domain will be able to access your objects in your bucket. Okay, we are going to see this thing also later on in detail, don't worry about it. So this is an overview of S3 guys, and this is how you upload objects into S3. Let's move on to the next topic in S3. Okay guys, let us talk about S3 security or Amazon S3 security, how you can be able to control who or which user is able to access your objects in your bucket, right? And it's a very crucial thing that you should know. So let us see some accesses. So user based access over here through IAM policies. So which API call should be allowed for a specific user from IAM, right? So using IAM you will be able to allow a particular service or a user access to S3, right? Then there is resource based policies, which is basically bucket specific, right? And one of those is known as bucket policies. So bucket wide rules from the S3 console allows cross account, right? So basically what this policy, this bucket policy is pertaining to your bucket. So basically you write policies from your bucket so that you will allow a particular person or a user or another service into your bucket. You write it in your bucket side, not through the IAM side. So don't get confused. IAM policies are different and bucket policies are different, right? Now inside bucket policies there is ACLs, which is basically access control lists, right? So object access control list means that finer grain control. So you can control, so there is an object, for example, beach.jpg. Sorry, let me just go back. So there is an object known as beach.jpg in your bucket. So you can be able to control which user or which particular service is able to access this beach.jpg also. Single object also you have control over. So that is what object access control is. Then bucket access control. You can also control, for example, there is a bucket, Akash bucket. You will be able to control who is able to access this bucket also, right? Now, talking about note, this is a very important point. An IAM principal can access an S3 bucket if. So what is a principal in IAM? We have studied this in detail in our IAM lecture. So principal means that any resource, right, who is trying to access another service in AWS. The principal can be another user or can be another service. In IAM policy, we specify it as a principal. So an IAM principal can access an S3 object if the user IAM permission allows it or the resource policy allows it, and there is no explicit deny. It means that you will be able to access a resource on S3 if your IAM permission allows it or the resource based policy, which is your bucket policy, allows it. Otherwise there is no explicit deny, right? Now encryption, talking about encryption, encrypt objects in S3 using encryption keys, and we saw a little bit about encryption when I was showing you the console, and you saw there is AWS SAA S3 encryption or something, that kind of encryption. So basically by default, remember that objects on S3 are encrypted by default, and you don't know how it is. We are going to see that in detail later on if I am going to create a encryption lecture, then you can see in encryption that how AWS by default encrypts your objects or any kind of data on AWS. But remember, by default any object that you upload into S3 is encrypted, right? So this is the overview of security on S3. So very important topics to take from this lecture is user based access and resource based access. Under resource based access you do it using bucket policies. We are going to see an example also, so don't worry about it. Now this is an example of a bucket policy. So basically they are JSON based policy. It is kind of similar to what you see in IAM policies, but it is pertaining to your bucket. Instead of a whole range of users that you do it in IAM console, it only refers to your bucket, right? So there is effect. So this effect that you see basically specifies, are you allowing or denying access? Then there is a SID, which is the ID of that policy, and there is a version of that policy, and this is complete statement. Now here there is the principal. So principal specifies that which resource is able to access my object. So if I want to give access to a user Akash, so I have to specify Akash in my principal, right? Now here it is specified as star. Star means that anyone. So anyone will be able to access my object, right? What is the action that this principal can perform? It can perform a get object, and get object is basically fetch the object, right? Then resource. what is the resource this particular policy is applied on? That is my example bucket. What is the /* that you are seeing over here? So basically this is a finer grained control over here. If you want to, for example, apply this policy on a beach.jpg object, so you can just say example bucket /beach.jpg. So what will happen? This statement, this whole policy will be applied to this beach.jpg object only. But in this case, it says /*. Means that all the objects in my bucket. I hope this particular JSON is clear to you guys, because it is very, very important to understand how it actually does the things. Now, example of a public access use policy, right? Use bucket policy. So there is an anonymous website visitor, or you can just say this is your client, right? And your client basically doesn't have any credentials. So what you did, there is some kind of a image or a document. So a document, and you want it to make accessible to everyone, right? It is kind of a launch, you can just say pamphlet for your company. So you want to make it accessible to everyone, right? So you create a bucket policy which allows public access. It means that the principle is *. Anyone will be able to access my objects in my bucket, and then you apply that policy to your bucket, and then any anonymous user will be able to access that. That's it. Pretty simple. User access to S3 IAM permissions. So it is pretty simple. This is just the opposite, right? So there is a IAM user and there is a IAM policy, and this IAM policy allows access to this S3 bucket. Then that user will be able to access that S3 bucket. As I've told you, right, in our previous lecture, in this particular slide, we have seen that an IAM principal can access an S3 object if the user IAM permission allow it or the resource policy allows it, and there is no explicit deny. So make sure you can control access using your bucket policy, like the resource based policy, or your IAM policy, right? So it makes sense, right? Okay. Now, example of an EC2 instance access using IAM roles. So we have learned about roles, right? So using roles, right? So there is a service or a AWS service. You have attached that service, that role to that service. So using that role, it will be able to access another service, right? So over here you have a EC2 instance and it wants to access a S3 bucket. How will be that particular EC2 instance will be able to access that S3 bucket? There are multiple ways, right? First of all, you can create a user and you can log into your EC2 instance using that user, and then you will be able to access that S3 bucket, but that is a bad thing to do. That is not a good practice. Using instance role, you can create an instance role, assign that role with whatever appropriate IAM permissions, and then attach that permissions or that role to the EC2 instance, and then the EC2 instance will be able to access that S3 bucket. Makes sense, right? Very good example. Cross account access using bucket policy. So you can also enable another AWS account to access your S3 bucket using S3 bucket policy. That is also possible. So bucket settings for block public access. Now, if you remember, recently when we just created our S3 bucket, and then we created our object, by default this setting was on, which is block all public access. And it has certain scenarios over here: block public access to buckets and object granted through access control lists, granted through any access control list, granted through a new public bucket or access point policies, or cross account access. So it says that by default all of these features are blocked. Cannot enable any one of them. So if you want to enable any one of them, you have to uncheck any one of those check boxes. After unchecking all of these check boxes, then you need to amend your bucket policy. Then only you can be able to give access to a different resource. So step 1 is to uncheck this thing, and then step 2 is to amend bucket policy. So you can just think about it. You can just say, okay, I will not uncheck, I'll skip this part and I'll directly amend the bucket policy. I'll give access to another user. That is actually not possible. This is kind of for example, you can just say a safety safety, you can just switch. It kind of is a safety switch on your objects. Let us see an example, right? There are certain confidential information on your bucket. So a new employee came into your organization, and by mistakenly that employee created a bucket policy which allows all access. By mistake he left the principal as star. So if there was no safety switch like this checkbox, so by default if it is not blocking the access, then this will be devastating. Everyone will be having access to this confidential information. So if by mistakenly that employee has done this thing and you have blocked all public access is on, then it will be controlled so that anyone else will be able to see that okay, the bucket policy is wrong, I need to amend it. So they will pray to God that okay, thank God that this was on. If he had also checked off this particular boxes, then it will be a disaster. He would be kicked out of the organization without any doubt, right? Okay, great. Now let us see an example about this bucket policies and everything. Okay, let us go to our bucket over here. So we have a beach.jpg, right? So let us click on this beach.jpg, and so let us go to permissions. So this is bucket, this is access control list, and this is object access control list, which is not at all used that much right now. So let us talk about the bucket policies right now. So let us go directly to bucket. I just wanted to show you that you can also go to the object and you can amend something, but it is better to directly go to the bucket and amend the bucket policy. Let us go to this bucket. Let us go to permissions over here. Now permissions overview, you can see buckets and objects are not public. So I will edit this setting, which is block public access by default. I'll edit this setting and I'll uncheck all the boxes and I'll save the changes. So you can see block all public access has been unchecked, and I'll save the changes over here. I'll just type confirm and I will just say okay. Now if you see this particular access, it says objects can be public, right? So it says that even though I go to my objects and I click on this object and I copy this object URL and I go to a new tab and try to access this object. Let us see what happens. I have unchecked that box. If you remember, I have unchecked that box. Even though I have unchecked it, still it says access denied because I need to amend my bucket policy now. Now you can make the objects public, but still I have not made the objects public. It is kind of a permission. That's, for example, let us say that you want your father's credit card, right? So you go to your father's credit card. What do you need to use the credit card? You need the PIN, right? So you go to your father and you ask for a credit card. So your father gives you the credit card and says, okay, you can use it. You can use it, but whenever you are using it, you need to ask me, call me and say that yeah, I am using it, and take the PIN from me. So your father gave the permission to use it, but still you cannot use it because you don't know the PIN, and that PIN is actually the bucket policy, right? Makes sense. Now let us go and amend that bucket policy over here. Okay, let us go to buckets, this bucket, and go to permissions, and here is my bucket policy. So let us click on edit, and you can write your own bucket policy if you remember everything, but I don't remember anything. I use a lot of Google search. I'm honest, because you don't have to remember everything. So just click on this policy generator and just use the tool. AWS provides it for free. Why will you not use it? Select the type of policy. I want a bucket policy, S3 bucket policy. I want the effect of allow, all right, and I want principal to be star. So I want anyone to be able to access my objects. So actions, under actions, let us select get object, so that anyone will be able to access or fetch my object. So get object, this one, let us select that, and ARN. So basically Amazon resource name, I can copy the ARN from here. So here it is the ARN in the edit bucket policy section. Just copy it and just paste it over here. And you have to do another thing. Do you know what is it? What is that thing? This is my bucket, but I need to add a slash and then my object name where I want to apply this bucket policy, because you cannot apply it on the whole object directly. You cannot just say this thing. You need to specify the object key, because remember, when we are talking about keys and objects, the folder structure is actually not a folder, it is just the key. So you need to specify the actual key to your object, right? So I need to specify /star. So /star means that this key just defines that I want to apply to all of the objects in my bucket. If you want to apply to a specific object, for example beach.jpg, so I can just do this thing. So /beach.jpg. This is the key of my beach.jpg image. But for now, let us keep it /star, right? And then add this statement and then generate policy. Let's just copy this policy from here, go back and paste it over here. And I think it will throw an error because of the space. No, there is no space. Great. And let us save the changes. Okay, so this is saved. And now if you see the permissions overview, the access is public now. It means that all of the objects in my bucket are now public. So if I go back to my buckets over here, so it says access public. Let's go back inside my bucket, go to beach.jpg, and let's copy this object URL and let us open a Cognito window and paste it over here. So this is the public URL now, and you can see that I am able to access this URL from anywhere, right? So this is how you can work around with bucket policies, and this is how you work around with security on S3. So let us talk about S3 static web hosting, and as the name suggests, it is website hosting. So if you want to host a static website, I'm not asking about any dynamic website like a React application or a microservice based application, so you cannot host all that. But if your requirement is just to host a static application like a landing page or a front page of your company or a pamphlet or some kind of stuff like a blog, right, you will be able to host that on S3. There is that particular service, right? So the user will, by using this particular this DNS name of your particular website, will be able to access the website from your S3 bucket. But the thing is, there are two steps of doing this. First of all, you need to make your bucket public, because your website will use certain resources. You can just say, okay, I'll only make my website as public. I will not make all of my resources public, which is fine. But the thing is, your website may use certain images, your website may use certain other scripts or something like that. So if all of those resources are also not public, then there will be an issue. So first step is make your bucket public, and the second step is to enable static website hosting, and it is a very easy configuration. Just go and just click one checkbox, that's it. And another thing, if you get an 403 forbidden error, make sure the bucket policy allows public reads. That's why I told you first step is to make your bucket public. So let us see an example. So I have a very simple website, this index.html. So you can just see that this is a very simple page. It says I love coffee and a hello world and a image over here. So if I just open up this index page and edit with Notepad++, you can just see it's a very simple HTML code, right? Just a minute. So just see head, and then there is an image, and there is a script, right? And don't worry about this fetch. This is we're going to see this in our course demo, cross origin resource sharing demo, right? Now let us go into our bucket over here, which I have already have, and let us upload something, right? Because I want to host that particular index.html. So let us upload and go to add files, and let us select this coffee and this index, because it loads my coffee image, right? So just click on open and just upload it. So this is done. So the first step is already done for me, because I have already made my bucket as public. If I go to my permissions, so I have checked my allow this block public access. I have allowed it, and then I have amended my bucket policy with effect allow principal as star, and action is get object, and the resources all the objects in my bucket. So there is a slash star over here. So this thing is done. Second thing is enabling static web hosting. So just go to your properties tab over here, scroll down to the end, and then there is the option of static web hosting. Just click on edit. Here just click on enable, and when you click on enable, you can just specify your index document like index.html, and if you have an error document, you can just specify an error.html. Actually, you can create an error.html. It is pretty simple. Let me just go over here and let me open Notepad++, right, and let us create a simple, let us first save it. Let us go save it as error.html first, and html/html, and let us make a body and then slash body, a simple page, right? Just want to say that this is a error page, right? So I'm take a h1 tag /h1, and in this h1 tag, so I'm just going to say sorry, you are at the wrong place. It means that you have gone to a wrong URL or something like that. Save it, quit, and there is the error page. So just go back to our here, and we'll upload the error.html later on, but just specify and save the changes, right? Okay, so edited static web hosting. Let us go back to our objects and upload this error.html. So error.html and upload. Okay, why is it taking so much time? Okay, let's close it, and here let us go to properties, and we have this bucket website endpoint, which is a normal DNS endpoint which is created by you by AWS, for you by AWS. So just copy it and just create a new incognito window and just paste it, right? So it should open your index.html page. It should be the case. Let's see. No, why is it so slow today, man? Okay, so it should load my image also. Okay, so it has loaded my image. For example, I do some, so slash, if I go and just say a UI, so I don't have a UI object. So if I just go here, so you can see that now I have given a wrong URL. So slash UI, that doesn't exist. So my error.html page automatically got displayed over here. So it says, sorry, you are at the wrong place. So that's how you will be able to work with static website hosting, right? So yeah, that was about static website hosting. Let us talk about S3 versioning. Okay, now it's simple as versioning your files, right? If you want to version your files, you are, for example, there is beach.jpg, and you made certain changes to this photo, and you want to keep all the versions in your particular bucket. So you can maintain a normal version or the original version, which is one. Then you can maintain another version with some changes, and you can maintain another version with some other changes. So you can do this by enabling versioning. By default, versioning is disabled on your bucket. You can use this feature by enabling versioning on your bucket. So it is enabled at the bucket level. It means that if you enable it versioning, then it is applicable for all the objects. It's not that you can only enable versioning for a single object, right? So some key override, some same key override will change the version, like 1, 2, 3. Basically, it will override the previous version, right? It is best practice to version your buckets. Protect against unintended deletes. Ability to restore a version, right? Easy to roll back to a previous version. Notes: any file that is not versioned prior to enabled versioning will have the version of null. It means that so currently in our bucket that we have just created, we haven't enabled versioning. So by default the version ID, so each version is associated with a version ID, like I said 1, 2, 3. It will be more complicated than that, but still an ID will be associated with a version. But for now, the objects which are already in my bucket, they are going to be assigned a version ID of null, because while I uploaded that objects, versioning was disabled. Now suspending versioning doesn't delete the previous version. It means that while the versions were created and you just deleted just disabled versioning, then the versions will still be there. Okay, and the next objects we are going to upload, they are going to be uploaded without versioning, right? Okay, now before going to replication, let us see an example about versioning. So let us go back to our bucket over here, and currently if I go to my properties and just go to my static website hosting, copy it, and if you see over here, my current website says, I think I love coffee, right? It says that I love coffee, and there is the image over there. Let us change this this particular thing to I love tea or something like that, right? And if I go to my objects over here, and if I just see, there is no versioning enabled. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to properties over here, and there is bucket versioning. Just let us edit it and enable versioning and save the changes, right? And let's go to objects, and here there is a toggle of show versions. And if I just toggle to show versions, then currently the version ID is null, because these objects were uploaded when versioning was disabled. So let us click it back. Let us go to my index.html and let us open it in Notepad++, and let us change something over here. So I want to create a new version of my website. So I just say I love tea, right? No, I prefer tea over coffee. So all those two coffee lovers, I'm really sorry about it. I don't know, just sorry. Okay, here I will upload the new version of my index.html. So add files, and let us upload this index.html and upload. So if I go back to my URL, I reload this URL, I had uploaded it, right? Okay, so it says I love tea now. So my new version of my index.html is being uploaded, and it's been overridden. So if I go back to my bucket and I toggle this show versions, so you can see under index.html, so this is the new version which has overridden this old version. So it says that this is the new version ID associated with my index.html which I just uploaded, right? So what if I want to go back to my previous version, right? So I need to delete this version which I just uploaded. So I want to go back to the previous version which it says I love coffee, right? So I just need to delete this previous version. So I'm just going to select this version, and I will just click on delete, and it says that it is a permanent delete option because I am deleting the current version. So I'm just going to say permanently delete. So I'm permanently deleting my current version, so I cannot restore my current version anymore, right? So let us close this. So here if you see, the index.html is there. I think it has been restored to the previous version which was null. If I go back to my website over here, and if I just do this thing, so you can see that it has been restored to I love coffee. Makes sense. Now let us do some other stuff. Let us just disable this toggle of show versions, and let us delete this coffee.jpg, and let us delete this thing. So just click on delete and delete this thing, right? So let us click close. So currently you can see there is no coffee.jpg. So we deleted our coffee.jpg, right? So let us see that website right now. Let us copy the image of the website. So this website has been reloaded, and if you see, this thing is not there. So if I just click on open image in new tab, then basically it will not be able to find that coffee.jpg image because we just deleted it, right? So it says sorry, you are at the wrong place, right? Cool. Now let us go back over here and let us see, select this show versions. So see, there is a delete marker over here. So this delete marker says that okay, you deleted the coffee.jpg, so but you haven't permanently deleted it. I have a marker to the original object, I have a pointer to the original object. If you want to restore it, then you are able to restore it. But how do you restore it? To restore this coffee.jpg, you just delete the delete marker itself. When you delete the delete marker itself, this original coffee.jpg will be restored. So just select the delete marker, click on delete, and just click on permanently delete, and delete, and close it. Now if you see, your coffee.jpg is as it is, like it was, right? Now if I go back and let us go to properties and let us copy that page, and let us create a new incognito window and let us see. Now you can see that this image is being loaded, right? So this is how you will be able to now work with versioning, and versioning is actually very much effective. You should version your objects if you are working in a production environment, right? So that was about versioning. Okay guys, let us talk about Amazon S3 replication, which is CRR and SRR. Basically both are the same. CRR means as cross region replication and SRR means that same region replication. So basically you will create one source bucket. So this will be your source and this will be your destination. So basically you upload image beach.jpg. So basically that will be replicated here. This beach.jpg will be here now. And that there is a asynchronous replication happening between source and destination. It doesn't mean that it will be instantaneous, or as you upload the object and then basically a call will be made to the destination bucket and instantly that particular object will be uploaded to S3 bucket. It doesn't work like that. It can be replicated anytime, right? So but it will be replicated. You have the confirmation that it will be replicated. So buckets can be in different AWS accounts, must give proper IAM permission, so that one bucket needs to access another bucket, right? So there should be an IAM role or an IAM user associated to it. Use cases is CRR, which is compliance. Basically CRR is for cross region replication. So in your company there is a rule that if you want to upload something in Europe, it must be replicated to your home location, which is in US. So you can enable cross region replication so that you don't have to manually upload the same object in US region, right? SRR use cases, same region replication, log retention, live replication between production and test environments, right? That is also you can do. Some notes about replication, right? Some important key points that you can remember about replication. If after you enable replication, right, only new objects are replicated, and this is very important, very important from the exam perspective, and it comes a lot. So if you have some existing objects, same thing with versioning, right? If you have some existing objects, the version will not be associated with it. It will be associated with null. Similarly, if there are some existing objects, they cannot be replicated, but you will be able to replicate as a batch operation. So what is a batch operation? Basically using a batch operation, you can take all of your objects from your bucket and just replicate it all at once, but it will not be an asynchronous type of replication. Like as you upload the object and as you enable replication, it will be replicated in the different bucket. You need to do it manually, so that's why it's a batch operation. But for other objects, after enabling replication, you upload it into your bucket, it will be replicated, right? Then replicates existing objects and objects that failed replication. For delete operations, this is a very important thing, can replicate delete markers. So if you remember from just recently, we just saw that when we delete without versioning, we just create a delete marker. So that delete marker will be replicated to your destination bucket if you have enabled it, but the permanent deletes, it will not get replicated. You have to do it manually in the replication bucket itself, right? So there is no chaining of replication. It means that if bucket 1 is replication into bucket 2, which is connected to bucket 3. So if you upload a object into bucket 1, it will be chained and it will be replicated in bucket 2 and bucket 3. It is not possible like that. If you want to replicate objects from bucket 1 to bucket 2 and bucket 3, then you need to create a replication rule from bucket 1 to bucket 2, and then you create another replication rule from bucket 1 to bucket 3. So chaining of replication is not possible. So don't think that if 3 buckets are connected through replication, then it will be all interconnected. So it will make it a lot messier. So it is not possible to chain replication, right? So you have to do it individually. Now before moving to storage classes, let us see an example about replication, right? So yeah, because it is a core service, right, I'm trying to show as much demos as possible, because it is very, very important that you understand all of the concepts in detail, right? Because a lot of question actually comes from the S3. Let us go back. Let us go to buckets. Let us create 2 new buckets now. One is the source bucket and one is the destination bucket. Remember one other important point, that to enable replication, you need to enable versioning on both the buckets, right? So the source bucket and the destination bucket. So we were discussing, right, the delete markers get replicated, right? So if there is no versioning enabled, then how will the delete markers will be replicated, right? Makes sense, common sense, right? Let us create a bucket. Let us name it as source bucket some random numbers. Let's keep the region as same, and let's keep everything as same, and just enable versioning, right? That's it. Let us create the bucket. And let us create another bucket, and let us name it as destination bucket and some random numbers, and let us do a same region replication. We don't need to do cross region replication, right? And let us create the bucket, enable versioning, right, and create the bucket. So we have created our source bucket and our destination bucket, right? So let us go to our source bucket over here, and let us go to properties, and here in properties you will see where is it? Sorry, go to management. Sorry, in management, if you see, there is replication rules, right? So here you need to create a replication rule, right? You need to specify that, okay, where you want to replicate. So let us create a replication rule over here, and let us give a replication rule as my replication rule, right? And status is enabled. Source bucket is the same source bucket which we have saying, source bucket 1 to 4, whatever it is, and just leave everything. Destination bucket is choose the bucket in this account, or browse S3, you can just say, and just select the destination bucket, choose the path like this. So this is the destination bucket. Create an IAM role. So so you can just say create an IAM role, so that my source bucket will assign that role. That role will be assigned to my source bucket, and basically appropriate permissions will be given to that role, so that my source bucket will be able to access the destination bucket. So you don't have to create it. If you have created your own role, then you can choose it from your roles, right? I have a lot of roles, but I haven't created a role. So if you want AWS to create that role and assign it, just choose create a new role over here, right? Then encryption, whatever, just keep it as defaults, and let us save it. Okay, you must specify a prefix or another filter. So apply to all objects in the bucket. So I don't want it to apply to a single object, right? I want all the objects in the bucket to be applied. So let us save. So prefix, it was asking because if you want to replicate a certain series of objects or a single object, you can choose that, but I don't want. So it says over here you can enable one-time batch operation to replicate the existing objects, but I don't want to do that. So I'm just going to say no, I do not want to replicate existing objects, and click on submit. So let us go to our source bucket, and let us upload something now, right? So let us go to our buckets, and let us open our destination bucket in another tab. So let us open our destination bucket in this tab, so that we can just see side by side what is happening. Source bucket, destination bucket. Let us upload something into my source bucket, add some files. Let us upload the beach.jpg and let us upload, right? It is uploading. Okay, it has been uploaded. Let us click on close. So let us go to our destination bucket. It will take some time, as it's an asynchronous replication, so it will not be instantaneous. So if I just you have to just wait a little bit, right? So where is, so just let me refresh this. So yeah, you can see that it has been replicated. It is quite fast, but if I had reloaded just after coming over here, then it wouldn't have been replicated, right? Now see, if I just click on show versions over here, so this version ID, if you compare it with this version ID over here also show versions, it's the same, right? So it's pb2w something like that, and here also the version ID is same. Now if I upload a new version of beach.jpg, so it will be also replicated. So add files and just upload beach.jpg and upload. So it's uploading. It's uploaded. Close. So if I select this one and show versions, so two versions are there, one is LH something and one is pb2w. So if I go over here and select this and show versions, just it will take some time. Let us just refresh this. Okay, now you can see that it has been, so the same version, new version has been replicated over here. Alright, now if I go over here and if I go to management over here, and there is a replication rule which is my replication rule, it has been already enabled. Now if I just go to my replication rule and so here actions, and let us edit this replication rule, and here there is a option over here, additional replication option, delete marker replication. It means that my delete marker, so when you delete, not the permanent delete, you do not delete a specific version, basically you just go and delete your object without specifying a version, then that delete marker will be replicated, right? So let's click on save, and let us go back to my source bucket. And let us, so I haven't enabled, if I delete a specific version, then it will be permanent delete, right? And it will not get replicated. But if I delete it without versioning, so a new delete marker will be created, that will be replicated, right? So if I just select this and click on delete, so this is not a permanent delete, as you can see. So delete and delete the objects. Okay, close it. So as you can see, if I click on show versions, so there is a delete marker. And I have enabled delete marker replication. If I go to my destination bucket, it may take a little bit of time, maybe 10 seconds or 15 seconds. Just click on refresh and refresh. Let's wait for 5 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so you can see this is the delete marker. So the delete marker has been replicated, but if you delete a specific version, then it will not get replicated. So remember one thing about versioning is that if you enable delete marker replication, then the delete marker will be replicated, but the actual delete operation, which is the permanent delete operation, it will not get replicated. You have to do it manually in the source bucket and the destination bucket. Okay, cool. Alright, let us move on to this S3 storage classes. Very, very important. You need to understand what each of the storage classes actually mean in S3, right? So first one is S3 standard, which is the default storage class of all the objects in S3. Whenever you upload a new object into S3, it goes into general purpose, which is a standard storage class. Then there is infrequent access. We're going to see everything in detail, so don't worry. Let us first list down all the storage classes. Then there is S3 one zone infrequent access. Then there is S3 Glacier instant retrieval. Then there is S3 Glacier flexible retrieval. Then there is S3 Glacier deep archive, and then there is S3 intelligent tiering. So you can move between classes manually, or you can use S3 lifecycle configuration, which we are going to learn later on, right? Let's move forward. So S3 durability and ability. What do you understand by durability? Right. So it means that your objects will not get lost. That is mean by durability. How durable are your objects when it is being stored in S3? What do you mean by availability? So like, is your object available at this particular point of time? That is known as availability. So if the server goes down for some time and your object becomes unable to access, right, unavailable, that is known as availability. Durability means that actually your object is present or not, right, if it has been deleted or not, or it has been lost or not. So the thing is, with any of your storage classes on S3, it provides with very high durability. So 11.9 durability. So durability is actually same for all the storage classes on S3. So it means that if you store 1, 10, 100, 1000, 10,000, lakh, 10 lakh crore, 1 crore I think it is, or 10 million, right? If you store 10 million objects with Amazon S3, you can on average expect to incur a loss of single object every 10,000 years. So it's basically good, right? So basically don't have to worry about your objects getting destroyed. So it is same for all the storage classes. Availability measures how readily available a service is, right? Varies depending on the storage class. So availability actually differs from one storage class to another storage class, right? Let us move on and see each storage class one by one. Now first one is the S3 standard or the general purpose, right? It has 99.99% availability, or 4.9 availability, right? 4.9, it is not 49, it is 4.9 availability. So it is used for frequently accessed data. Whatever data you have, like, it is frequently accessed. For example, big data analytics or mobile and gaming applications where users can access it at any time, and it requires very low latency to access your objects. Then in that case you are going to use general purpose or S3 standard, and it can sustain about 2 concurrent facility failures, right? So its availability is very, very good, and it has also very good disaster management. Talking about S3 storage classes, infrequent access, right? So for data that is less frequently accessed but requires rapid access when needed. So infrequent access is basically provides you with a little bit less availability, which is 3.9 availability. So standard was 4.9 availability, this is 3.9 availability. And the use cases are basically for disaster recovery, backups and stuff, right? So Amazon S3 one zone infrequent access, so one zone IA, right? So it means that your data is being stored in one zone. It's basically, if you select a standard storage class, it's stored on 2 or 3 availability zones, but in one zone infrequent access, it is being stored in one zone, one availability zone. So it gives you about 99.5% availability. Use cases is storing secondary backup copies or a data that you can recreate, right? So Glacier storage classes, just to summarize all the Glacier storage classes, these are used for very, very large log retention or very, very large data archiving purposes. But in Glacier storage services also there are three categories. So one of the very you can just say attractive features of Glacier storage is that low cost object storage meant for archiving and backup. But if you talk about the pricing, there is very less price for storage. That is the first feature that you saw, but there is a object retrieval cost which is not there in S3 standard and S3 infrequent access. So if you go towards the standard storage classes, there is no object retrieval cost. For example, there are certain objects, beach.jpg. So in standard you just pay for storage of this object, but in Glacier there is also a retrieval cost. So whenever there is a get object happens on your object, then there will be a small cost associated with it. But the thing is, the storage cost is so less that this retrieval cost actually doesn't matter, right? But if you want instant retrieval, then why will you store it in Glacier storage, right? So the first one in Glacier storage is Glacier instant retrieval. So it has millisecond retrieval, great for data accessed once a quarter, like you are accessing data every 90 days. This is very good for you. and you want millisecond retrieval, you want low latency, then you can go with S3 Glacier instant retrieval. Then the second one is S3 Glacier flexible retrieval, formerly S3 Glacier. So it was known as S3 Glacier formerly. Now it has three types of retrieval techniques. One is expedited retrieval technique, which can take up to 1 to 5 minutes. Next is a standard retrieval technique, which is 3 to 5 hours retrieval time. And then we have bulk. You can just take like 10 objects and you can retrieve it as a bulk, which is 5 to 12 hours, which is free of cost. So there is no retrieval cost associated to it. But the minimum storage duration is 90 days, and it is also true for Glacier instant retrieval also. Now Glacier Deep Archive, which is the cheapest storage option, it has two techniques of retrieval. One is standard 12 hours and one is bulk, which is 48 hours. So it is good if you access the if you have data which you access every 180 days. If you are accessing data every 6 months or 180 days, then it is good for you, right? Now this is a very new feature. Actually it's not that much new, but still it's a very good feature. It is intelligent tiering, and as the name suggests, it will intelligently switch the storage classes for you. But as it is doing it for you, you are going to pay a monthly monitoring and auto tiering fee, right? And it moves objects automatically between access tiers based on usage, right? Now there are no retrieval charges in S3 intelligent tiering like standard storage, and basically it is it automatically moves between your frequently accessed tiers and your infrequently accessed tiers. So frequently accessed tiers is a default tier, which is a standard, right? Then it will automatically move to infrequent access tier if the objects are not accessed for 30 days, like standard infrequent access or SAA. Then if it is not accessed for 90 days, it will move into archive instance tier, which is Glacier instant retrieval, right? Then archive access tier, which is optional. If you have to configure it from your own. If your objects are not accessible from 90 days to 700 plus days, it will automatically move it to a Glacier archive tier. Then if you configure your objects to move to move to your deep archive tier, which is a Glacier deep archive tier, then it will move your objects if it goes from 180 days to 700 plus days. So these two steps, right? These two steps are configurable by you, but till your archive instant tier, it is automatic if you select intelligent tiering. Very, very good feature. But there is another alternative to this. You can create your manual lifecycle policies. This is a kind of alternative to intelligent tiering. You can create this thing, and this is free of cost, right? We are going to learn this later on. But you can also choose with intelligent tiering. There is a small drawback of lifecycle policies, which you're going to see while learning about it, right? Now this is a very good comparison of S3 storage classes. You can take a screenshot or something. It is kind of a summary of all the storage classes. You can see the durability, availability zones. If you see in standard, it has greater than equals to 3, intelligent tiering greater than equals to 3, standard IA is greater than equals to 3, but in one zone IA, it only stores in one availability zone, right? Minimum storage duration is none for standard, intelligent tiering and standard IA. For standard IA, it is 30 days, one zone IA, it is 30 days, and for Glacier and flexible retrieval is 90 days, and then 180 days for Glacier deep archive. Minimum billable object size. This is a new thing. I haven't covered it, but the thing is, what is the minimum size of the object that you need to store to be able to store in that particular storage class? So it is none for standard and intelligent tiering, but for other storage classes like standard IA, it should be at least of 128 KB size, similar for one zone IA, similar for instant retrieval. But for Glacier flexible retrieval and Glacier deep archive, it must be minimum 40 KB storage. Retrieval fee is none for standard, none for intelligent tiering. For standard IA, there is per gigabyte retrieved, the one zone IA per gigabyte retrieved, and these are all the storage thing. But if you use bulk technique in Glacier that is also free. So I have not mentioned it over here. Okay, now this is a storage classes price comparison example of US East 1. So if you see over here, oh sorry, let me just go back. So you can just see standard, storage cost. If you compare the standard with the Glacier Deep Archive, just see what is the difference. It is $0.023 and this is $0.00099. So even if there is a retrieval fee associated with Glacier Deep Archive, it is actually much more efficient for long-term storage or LTS, right? Okay, so you can just see this comparison and you can figure out which one works for you, and questions may come from this stuff also, right? Let us see a small example about storage classes. So if I just go to my buckets over here, and so this bucket, if I upload a new object to my bucket, upload and add file, and let us select this extra page, and if I just go to permissions or properties, then there you can select the storage class over here, right? You can directly select if you want to store store it in Glacier Deep Archive, you can select that, or if you want to store it in standard or intelligent tiering, whatever, you can select that, right? It is possible to do that while you are uploading the object. Now if you want to change it for a current object, like for example beach.jpg, you can go there, and if you see over here, there should be a storage class option over here. Click on edit, and you can manually move this object from standard, for example, to one zone IA. You can do that, and you can save the changes. I'm not going to do that, but you can do this thing. So if you want to automate it, you need to create lifecycle policies, which you are going to see in our next section. Okay, or you can just select intelligent tiering. It will automatically move through the storage classes for you, but you have to pay a small auto tiering fee, right? So that was all about storage classes. Okay guys, let us talk about some advanced concepts about S3, which is also very important for the exam. And let us start with the first topic, which is moving between storage classes. We learned about storage classes and what is the advantages of each storage class, right? So the thing is, you can transition between storage classes. So for infrequently accessed object, move them to standard IA, right? Like infrequent access. For archive objects, you don't need fast access to move them to Glacier or Glacier Deep Archive, right? And these are one of the most long-term storage options, and they are the cheapest storage options that you will find on S3. Then moving objects can be automated using lifecycle rules. So you can either choose intelligent tiering, so it will automatically move your objects between the tiers. Otherwise, you can move objects using lifecycle rules, right? Now Amazon S3 lifecycle rules, so there are two options over here. One is transition actions and another one is expiration actions, right? So it means that what are the actions that you can do using a lifecycle rule. So transition action, as the name suggests, it configure objects to transition to another storage class. So from one storage class, if you want to move to another storage class, you have to define a rule. So after these many days, I will transition this object to another storage class. For example, move to standard IA after 60 days after creation. Move to Glacier after 6 months. Some expiration actions example. So configure the objects to expire or delete after some time. For example, delete after 365 days. So there is a file, for example, beach.jpg, and you configured it to be deleted after 700 days. So you have to define an expiration action for that. Okay. Now rules can be created for a certain prefix. For example, s3:/my bucket/mp3/star. Right. So obviously prefix, it means that, for example, under this, you can just compare it like a folder, right? But usually it is not a folder, but judging from the UI of S3, you can think of it as a folder. So you can just compare it like whatever objects are in this particular prefix or in this particular folder, which is mp3, will be can be applied a transition rule as a whole. And rules can be created for certain object tags, for example, department::finance, right? It is also possible. Now, for example, let us see a question which may come from Lifecycle Rules, and basically you can see that your application on EC2 creates image thumbnails after profile photos are uploaded to Amazon S3. These thumbnails can easily be recreated. So it means that even though we lose the thumbnails, it doesn't matter because it can be easily recreated. So that is one of the key points in the question, and this question is also an example how you deduce your answer, right? And only you need to be kept for 60 days. So it means that the thumbnail can only be kept for 60 days. The source images should be able to be immediately retrieved for these 60 days. So immediate retrieval is necessary for the source images, and afterwards the user can wait up to 6 hours. So it means that after 60 days the user can be waiting up to 6 hours, and even though 6 hours is the time limit, it's okay with it. How do you design this? So this is the answer. So source images can be on standard storage class with a lifecycle configuration to transition them to Glacier after 60 days. So you can have, for example, after 60 days the user can wait up to 6 hours, right? And the basic standard retrieval time for Glacier is 6 hours. So you can create a lifecycle rule so that after 60 days the source images will be transferred from standard to Glacier. So thumbnails, what about the thumbnails? So S3 thumbnails can be in one zone IA with a lifecycle configuration to expire them after 60 days, right? So it can be deleted after 60 days, and as after 60 days the thumbnails are no longer required. And you can keep it on one zone infrequent access tier because, as you know, if the thumbnails are lost, it is fine. It is not a big issue. Another example, a rule in your company states that you should be able to recover your deleted S3 objects immediately for 30 days. So this is the very key point. Although this may happen rarely, right? After this time, up to 365 days, deleted objects should be recoverable between 48 hours. Now the thing is, you should be keeping your attention on the words. First is, you should be able to recover your deleted S3 objects. How can you recover your deleted S3 objects? One of the key points is versioning. And immediately for 30 days, so basically standard tier, right? Although this may happen rarely, after this time up to 365 days, deleted objects could be recoverable between 48 hours. So the first point that you need to do is versioning, right? That's what I said over here. In order to have object version so that the deleted objects are in fact hidden by a delete marker, right? And we have seen the example of how to do it, right? And it can be recovered, obviously. Then transition the non-current versions, right, of the object to standard infrequent access. Non-current versions means the versioned items, like if you have uploaded a new version of the same object, then the non-current versions are the previous version. So transfer them to standard infrequent access. Then transition afterwards the non-concurrent versions to Glacier Deep Archive, right? So after 365 days they can be transferred. Non-current versions, not the current versions. Current versions are just the latest version of the object that you have uploaded. Non-current are the previous versions, right? So you have to first transfer it to standard IA because after 30 days it is fine. Then you can, after 365 days, you can transfer to Glacier Deep Archive, right? Now, so let us talk about this Amazon S3 analytics, right? And it is also a new feature. It is used for storage class analysis, right? Don't confuse between S3 analytics and S3 intelligent tiering. So it helps you to decide when to transition objects to the right storage class. So it will give you a report, right? And it will give you, like, for your previous usage on your particular bucket, it will give you a report, and based on the report you can create, new lifecycle rules and something like that. Okay, so report is updated daily, and 24 to 48 hours you have to wait to start seeing the data analysis, because it will use some kind of previous usage features and your bucket log information to generate the report, right? So you should give it some time. Okay, now the last thing that we are going to cover before seeing a demo on lifecycle rule is S3 requester pays. Now in general, right, bucket owners pay for all the Amazon S3 storage, because whoever created the bucket needs to pay for the particular S3 storage, and the data transfer fee also is getting associated with the bucket, right? So you can see the networking cost and the storage cost is completely given by the owner. So sorry, okay, completely given by the owner. The requester is actually not paying anything. But the thing is, you can use S3 requester pays to actually reduce the burden on the owner. So whenever a particular person, whoever the requester is actually downloading the object or fetching the object, then that particular requester has to pay the networking cost or the transfer cost for that particular object. So it is helpful when you want to share large data sets with other accounts or other persons, right? And the requester must be authenticated in AWS, cannot be anonymous. So you cannot create an anonymous URL like we did by making our bucket public, and you provide that URL and anyone who accesses it has to pay the amount. It is not possible like that. The requester must be should be registered as an AWS user. It can be another account or it can be another user. So it can be, but it should be associated with AWS, right? So that's how you can be able to enable requester pay, so that the requester will pay for the networking cost or the data transfer cost, but the storage cost the owner has to bear with it, right? Okay, now let us see an example about lifecycle rules, guys. So let me just go to S3. I think I had deleted all my S3 buckets for some reason. Okay, let us create a bucket and let us name it as example bucket, and let us give the region, just keep it like that. Everything should be the same, default encryption. Go to advanced settings, and there is some concept of object lock which we are not going to discuss right now. We're going to discuss that later on. And let us create the bucket. Oh sorry, unique name, my bad. You have to give the unique name, right? And then create the bucket. Okay, so my bucket has been created. Let us go over here and let us go to properties. Let us go to management, right? Management, and under management you will see the lifecycle rules, right? You can create a lifecycle rule over here, and you can just give the rule name as my lifecycle rule, and you can just select this to apply to all the objects in the bucket, or you can just limit the scope by entering the prefix. For example, there is a folder my app, and then inside there is some objects. You can give the prefix like this. Otherwise you can apply to all the objects in the buckets, right? I acknowledge that this rule will apply to all objects in the bucket. Now there are actions. Now there are two types of actions we saw. One is the transition action, to transition your object from one storage class to another storage class, and there is another action which is expiration action, right? Deleting your objects basically. So move current versions of object between the storage classes. You want to also do this thing. Move non-current versions of object between storage classes if you also want this feature. Non-current, you know, right? So the previous versions of your object. Move expire current versions of object. You can select this, and permanently delete non-current versions of the object. Whatever action you want, basically you can select it from this check boxes, right? Transition current versions of the object between storage classes. So transition to standard IA after 30 days. You can add another transition to Glacier deep archive after 365 days. Then you can save this particular lifecycle rule. You can create this rule, and this rule will be in effect. So whatever happens, whatever object you just put in, and if it is for example a current version of your object, then this rule will come into the picture. For non-current versions, you can define your own rules over here, other rules like transition to standard IA after 30 days. So for each action you have to put a rule over here, right? Whatever actions you have selected, for each action you have to put a rule over here. Not one rule, you can have multiple rules, right? You can add a transition over here. For example, let's remove this, add a transition, and let us see where is it? Okay. Expire current versions of object. This is what I was thinking about. So expire after 700 days. So after 700 days, the objects will get deleted. Right, and here you can just see review transition of expiration actions. So day 30 objects move to standard IA, right? Day 700 objects expire. So here you can just see the flow chart of what you have done with the rules. Remember one thing about this thing, guys, lifecycle rules, is that you can move from the upper storage class to the lower storage class. From upper, I mean from standard, which are the fastest storage classes, right? You can move from standard to Glacier deep archive, but you cannot move from Glacier back to standard. It is not possible using lifecycle rule. But if you want that kind of feature, then you can go with intelligent tiering, and it is a very good question that comes nowadays in the exam. Now you can get confused between lifecycle rules and intelligent tiering. If there is an option where it says that you after moving to Glacier, then after, for example, the object started getting more retrieval retrieval from the users, you need to move it back to the standard storage class, then it is not possible using lifecycle, because once you move to a higher storage class, to a lower storage class, which is Glacier, you cannot move it back to a higher storage class like standard using lifecycle rules. You can do it using intelligent tiering. You have to select the intelligent tiering while you upload the object, right? So that's how you can do it. So make sure you don't get confused between these two things, right? And about S3 analytics, basically it generates a report regarding how your objects are used, and based on that you can create your lifecycle rules, right? Okay, so we can just click on cancel over here, and let us move on to the next topic. Okay, let us talk about S3 event notifications, right? So basically, whenever a particular action is performed on S3, so a particular event is generated, right? Because it's an event, it can be a get object event or a put object event, right? And based on those events, right, you can trigger certain functionalities. You can trigger another service like SNS, SQS, or a Lambda function. So what are the events, right? So created objects, removed objects like delete objects, restore objects, and replication, that is also an event. Object name filtering is possible. Use cases, generate thumbnails of images uploaded to S3. So the basic use case will be, for example, there is a S3 bucket and there is a put object event happens, and using that put object event, you invoke a Lambda function, and then that Lambda function will convert your images into thumbnails, right? This is a generate workflow of how you can use event notification to generate thumbnails, and it's a very popular question, right? You can create as many S3 events as desired, right? It's not a limitation. S3 events typically delivers events in seconds, but can take a minute or longer. So it is not synchronous, like completely instant. It can take some time. So there is S3 event notifications, right? And a new feature, or you can say it's actually been a long time since it is there, and it is known as event bridge. So basically, what is event bridge? It is an enhanced version of event notification service, right? It provides you with advanced filtering options with JSON rules, metadata, object size, name, and etc. Multiple destination, example step functions, kinesis streams, and firehose. Because if you see in event notifications, if you enable event notification in S3, it can only send the events to SNS, SQS, and Lambda. That is a limitation. But using event bridge, actually event bridge connects with a lot of services. It connects with over 18 plus AWS services, so it is much more interactive and much more reliable, right? And it's also very you can optimize it and customize it as much as possible, right? So you can go with Amazon Event Bridge. It has archive replay events capability, which is not possible in case of event notifications, but still event notifications are popular because they are easy to set up. Okay, so let us see an example about event notifications, right? So let me go to my this console. Let me just sign into my console. And let me just go to S3. And here I have a bucket over here, so let me just go to my bucket and let me go to properties, right? Here in properties, where is it? Event notifications. Yeah, here is event notification. You can create an event notification for your bucket. You just click here and you can name the event name as put object event. It means that object has been uploaded, right? And prefix whatever, just leave it, suffix leave it. So you can just say all object create events like put, post, copy. You can just select whatever you want, but for now let us keep it as put object, like created if the object has been uploaded. So let us select that. And if you want to also generate an event for object removal, you can go for that. A lot of features are there. Replication events, you can also go for that. Any lifecycle transition events, like if one object goes from one class, storage class, to another storage class, you can also trigger on that. Intelligent tiering also is possible. Destination, as I've told you, right, only 3 destination you can send it to. Let us send this event to an SQS queue. Currently I don't have any SQS queue, so let us create a SQS queue, right? It's very easy to create. So just select SQS or search for SQS over here. So SQS is basically a queue, right? It kind of acts as a buffer between 2 services, right? So if one service is sending a message to another service, so basically it's an asynchronous communication. So the message can go into the queue first, and from that queue the another service, the consumer service, may poll for that message anytime it wants. So I'm not going to dig deeper into SQS right now because we're going to cover that in a separate lecture, but that's a normal thing about SQS. It's a message queuing service which is used for asynchronous communication between services. Okay, now let us create the queue. Let us create a standard queue and just let's say S3 event queue, something like that. So just keep everything as defaults. You have to create an access policy, like a resource access policy, a SQS queue policy for this SQS queue, because this SQS queue must allow S3 to publish messages into the queue, right? Because whenever one service wants to communicate with another service in AWS, the basic rule of thumb is that particular service must have access. So if this particular SQS, if the S3 bucket doesn't have access to this SQS queue, then it cannot publish messages, right? As simple as that. So we'll do this later. Okay, so let's create the queue as of now. Okay, and if just go into access policy section, then we have to edit this, but just let us go back to our example bucket, and here so where is the refresh button? Let me just choose from a SQS queue. So I need this. Let's refresh this page. Okay, S3 event, S3 put object, right? Put object event, prefix, suffix. So let us go for this put object and SQS queue, right? We're going to send it into SQS queue. So this, let us select this. So let us click on save changes. When I click on save changes, if you see, it says an unexpected error occurred. Why that? And if you see the API response, unable to validate the following destination configuration, because when you save the changes, S3 tries to connect to that SQS queue, tries to send a test message, but it is not able to send the test message because it is not able to communicate with the queue, because the queue doesn't allow permission for the S3 bucket to access the queue. So what we are going to do is we're just going to go into here and we're just going to modify the access policy. Let's click on edit, and here let's go to the policy generator and quickly generate a policy for this SQS queue, right? And it's SQS queue policy. Effect is allow principal. Let us give as star so that anyone can access this SQS queue. And actions is let us say send message. Let us see that, so that the particular person or whatever user will be able to send the message. So the principal is star, as whoever access this only has the permission to send the messages, right? Amazon resource name is basically this resource, which is this particular queue. Let us copy this from here and paste it over here and add this statement over here and generate this policy. Copy this policy from this policy generator, go back over here and just Control A, Control V. That's it. And we're done. Now let's save it. All right. Now if I go back to my this bucket, right, and if I save the changes, then I think it should get the permission for that, and you can see that it has been saved. If I go inside my queue right now, queues and S3 event queue, currently it doesn't have any messages, I think, right? So let us try to upload something into this bucket, right? Let us go into the buckets. So let us upload something over here, upload and add files, and let us upload let me go back into my folder. Let me go to S3 and try to upload this beach.jpg, right? And let's upload this. So this upload must generate an event right now, and a message must be sent to the particular queue. So let us close this thing and let us go back over here and let us go to queues. So one available messages it says. So I just go inside here, and where is my messages? Where are my messages? Let us click on here. Sorry. Okay, so you can see there are two messages over here. Let us poll for messages, and as you can see there are two messages received. So let's check this message, and if you see this particular message, it says object created because new object was uploaded into S3. And if I just go down, and there are some details about the object, which was beach.jpg, and some stuff over here, right? Some details. So you can see that an event occurred in S3, and that particular thing just sent a message over here, right? Now here if you see the previous message over here, so it was a test message, right? So that it just tested that yes, I am able to communicate with the SQS queue when we just did that, right? When we were attaching this SQS with my S3 bucket, so that a test message was sent, right? Now I think this pretty much summarizes how S3 notifications work. So I'm just going to purge this clear content. Let's clear everything. Okay, now let's go back. Let us go to this queue. Actually, let us delete this queue altogether. Actions and purge the queue. So basically it will delete everything that is inside this queue, and let us select and delete now. So this should delete the queue now, right? So that's it. Okay, let us go back. Now let us talk about this baseline performance or S3 performance, right? Now Amazon S3 automatically scales to request high rates, latency of 100 to 200 milliseconds. So it has very low latency, right? Your application can achieve at least 3500 put, copy, post, delete and 5500 get head requests per second per prefix in a bucket. Now this per prefix is a very tricky thing to understand. You would think that for per object or something like that you are getting 3500 put, copy or post, delete operations and 5500 get or head requests. So get request means that get object and put is put object, right? Now there are no limits to the number of prefixes in a bucket. That is the very good thing, right? You can create n number of prefixes, and for each prefix you will get 3500 and 5500 requests, right? Put and get requests. For example, here see this is a prefix, right? Bucket slash folder 1 slash sub 1 slash file 1. So this is folder 1 slash sub 1, this is one prefix, and then folder 1 slash sub 2, this is another prefix. So for this one you get 3500, 5500, and for this one also you get 3500 and 5500, right? This one is also a prefix, this one also prefix. So if you spread reads across all four prefixes, you can achieve nearly 22,000 requests per second for get and head, because if you add all of those things, right, so 5,500 plus 5,500 over here for this prefix plus 5,500 for here for that prefix, so it total how much it makes? 22,000, right? Pretty cool, right? So you'll get a lot of performance if you spread your read operations across different prefixes, right? Now S3 performance, how can you improve performance while working with S3, right? One of those things is known as multi-part upload, right? So it is recommended for files greater than 100 MB and must use for files greater than 5 GB. So basically what it says is that you have a very big file, for example 1 GB file, you divide it into parts, so 300 MB, 300 MB and 300 MB or 400 MB, right? And then you upload them in parts, so you parallelly upload them. So this 1 file, 2 file and 3 file will parallelly get uploaded to S3. So instead of uploading a single very large file, you are uploading in parallelly, right? And each file has less size. So in this case what happening is that, so the transfer is faster, right? You are actually utilizing your whole bandwidth, you are parallelly uploading your files, so basically you are optimizing your uploads, so that's why it is much faster. So this is for uploads. Now what about downloads? How can you make your downloads faster from S3? To do that, you use something known as S3 transfer acceleration. So what is S3 transfer acceleration? Increase the transfer speed by transferring file to an AWS edge location, which will forward the data to S3 bucket in the target region. Actually this is the opposite of using CloudFront, and I have discussed CloudFront in great detail in a separate lecture, you can see that. So what does CloudFront does? You have a source and you have a destination. Source is at a different place and destination is a different place, and there is an edge location at the nearest near to your destination. So what will happen? From the source the file will come, it will be cached at your edge location, and then the cached file will be sent to the destination. So latency is less in this case because the file is getting cached and you are getting the cached file instead of going back to the source, which can be millions of kilometers away, right? So same thing about this S3 transfer acceleration. You are at some point or a destination, you want to upload to a bucket which is in, for example, in America. So this bucket is in US and your destination is in India. So there is a closest edge location, edge Mumbai. Now what will happen? You use this edge location, you actually upload the file to the edge location, and that edge location will use private AWS network to transfer that file back to the bucket. So this is actually you are using AWS's global infrastructure to upload your file which to a bucket which actually resides in the US. So this is how transfer acceleration works, right? And this is pretty cool. You can see the diagram over here, and it is the kind of opposite of CloudFront, how CloudFront works, right, for downloads. Byte range fetches, this is also a way to optimize performance. So parallelize gets by requesting specific byte ranges, better resilience in case of failure. So what happens is that there is a large file, right, and it consists of n number of parts, but the thing is you only want the header part of that file, which is basically, for example, 500 bytes. So you can retrieve partial file, that header portion of that file, which is 500 bytes, so that you only need that 500 bytes. So 500 bytes is pretty less, right, and you can do your work. So just request for partial retrieval of the file, and you will get that particular partial data, and then you can work with it. So that is known as byte range fetches. You specify a range till which you want the file, and then that much of that particular file will be fetched for you, right? So you can just say first XX bytes I want to fetch for the file. Now talking about S3 select and Glacier select, right? So this is basically pertaining to S3 select and Glacier select. So as the select term here means that you are selecting the data. So retrieve less data using SQL by performing server side filtering. So what do you mean by filtering? Kind of when you write SQL statements, right? You write a select query, select star from employee DB where phone number equals to something something. So you will do the same thing while selecting the data from S3 using S3 select and Glacier select. It's a new feature which allows you to filter the data server side, so the filtered data will come to the client. So don't have to extract all the data and then filter client side. It is a very you will get more transfer cost in that case. So just filter it server side and get the required data, so it will be less cost to you. Now S3 batch operations, we already know that batch operation means what? You have a number of objects and you perform some operation on those objects, right, in a particular batch. So what operations can you perform? So basically modify objects and metadata and properties, copy objects between S3 buckets, encrypt and unencrypt objects at once, then modify ACLs and tags, restore objects from S3 Glacier, invoke lambda function to perform custom action on each object. So whatever similar type of actions you want to perform on multiple objects, you can use S3 batch operations. Okay, cool. Now there is a feature known as S3 inventory. So S3 inventory is, you can get an object list of what all objects are there in your particular bucket, and then you can perform a S3 select on those bunch of objects. You can filter the data, and then you can get the filtered list of data, right? And then you can also perform batch operations after that, and these are your processed objects. So you can mix and match whatever features are there in S3, and you can work with it. You have a plethora of options to work with when dealing with S3, right? So that was about batch operations. So yeah, that was all about S3, guys. We're going to cover S3 security later on in a next video or a separate video, because it's also a very important thing. But whatever you needed to learn about S3, right, we have covered from A to Z. I don't think you will get any more different questions other than what you have covered in this particular lecture, right? So yeah, that's all about it, guys. We're going to meet in the next video. Till then, have a nice day. Bye bye.